Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, who's on the sidelines cheering on the Friend Zone champion, Sir Jorah Mormont. Joining me this fine recording session are one Amanda Howard.
Who's still rowing.
Stephen Howard.
Who's burning in dragon fire because he wouldn't bend the knee to some jerk.
Nick Castillo.
Safety is never a permanent state of affairs.
And last but certainly never ever least, one Gary Delaney.
I'm feeling like Thoros today. No one's given me anything to drink here, and I'm not feeling like myself.
Okay. That's surprisingly tame for Gary here.
That's incredibly I'm actually disappointed. Like, Gary, we give you the last spot to get,
I
It's
went
on point.
off the rails. I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before. So I determined I need to stay on the rails. I wrote it down. Sorry.
Disappointed, Gary.
It's the calming of the storm. You all know he's just going to drive us right off the cliff later.
Gary,
Also
do you have
scary.
this like on a sign on your wall saying "Stay on the rails"?
Stay on the rails.
It's one
That
of
would
the
be
post-it
too good of a
notes he
life
holds up.
advice.
It's one of his
Stay on
signs.
target.
Stay on the rails.
Stay on target.
Yeah, instead of a "Live, Laugh, Love" sign, he's got a "Stay on the
stay
rails."
on the rails.
But the funny thing is that it's still a cat poster. It's like a cat poster just like staring at him, hanging off the branch going, "Don't you screw this up."
Don't.
All right, we
I just
are
imagine
here.
a cat with a little train conductor hat. Like, stay on the rails.
We are here
Anyway.
to cover episode 5 from season 7 called Eastwatch. Daenerys demands loyalty from the surviving Lannister soldiers. Jon heeds Bran's warning about the White Walkers on the move. Cersei vows to vanquish anyone or anything that stands in her way. To open it up here with a brief little bit, Eastwatch by the Sea is shown in the cold opening there. Well, not cold opening, but it's shown in the actual opening there for the first time. And let's see here. My point I want to start off with here, I guess, just deals with kind of everything going on. It basically starts with Jaime and Bronn having survived their little encounter into the water. My question though is, it kind of deals with Tyrion walking around the battlefield, surveying the carnage that happened there, basically. And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit last time here too, of like, Tyrion seems distraught, unhappy about everything, but at the same time, it's like, what did he expect to happen? This
Yep.
is a battlefield. Dany brought the dragons in, which are obviously like, they're kind of constantly referred to as like the nuclear weapon of this universe here, but Dany had to show strength here at some point in time, and she did. Maybe not in the way that anybody else would have liked, but I mean, it kind of goes to like, what is Tyrion thinking is going to happen? Everyone's just going to bend the knee and all things are going to be right with the world, that Dany doesn't have to unleash her dragons on anyone, or what? I'm just kind of curious if anyone else had kind of anything further about that, or maybe we kind of covered it more in depth too last time we talked about this. Go ahead, Steven.
For someone who prides himself on such pragmatism and realism in political affairs and all that stuff, I entirely agree with you. He's just like I don't even know what to say. I don't want to call it a weakling per se, but absolutely starry-eyed. Maybe he was like dewy-eyed when he first met Daenerys and thought that Daenerys was just going to be just the nicest human being on a face of the planet, which is a notion he should have been disabused of by now. But he's so confused about, this is what happens in a battle? People die? Is this what I've been doing this entire time? It's like, how many come to Jesus moments does this character need to understand that, hey, war is hell? Like, it's not some game in a book or something. I don't know. It seems weird, and it seems almost contrived, like they had to have someone around there with Daenerys have these emotions, and the only other major character right now that they're showing is Tyrion. So Tyrion's the one that gets stuck with all the emotions, which make no sense for his character to have. Nick.
In a glass jar of emotions.
I'm in a glass jar of emotions.
I didn't see him as much concerned about the carnage. I think he's seen some of that already with Dany. I took it more as he was walking around because they were Lannisters. These could have been people that he knew, or friends that he might have seen around the Ghastly Rock, or just the fact that because they at one point like zoomed in on a burning Lannister army flag, and to me it was maybe just a little bit of regret. Maybe not so much I saw it as the carnage, but just the fact that like this was somebody that he knew that maybe in another life like he felt like he betrayed them somehow. Which again, he should have known that was going to be the outcome, but that's what I took it at.
Also, later in this episode, Davos and Tyrion return to King's Landing, and he's like, "Oh, the last time I was here, this happened." He's like, "The last time I was here, you burned my son alive." So obviously, Tyrion has made plans that burn people alive, but he burned people alive who were in ships, and by the time he didn't see a battlefield. They all sunk with ships. He didn't have to watch the carnage. Nick is waving at me.
I would like to remind the gentleman in his basement. I don't know why he's in his basement. It's just kind of weird, Gary. But I'd like to remind the honorable gentleman that he did fight at the Battle of the Blackwater. That's why he got the battle axe scar across his face. So he has seen battle firsthand, face up close. Continue with your point. Fake and false as it is.
I don't know why
Fake
Nick
and
had to
false
interrupt me
as
for
it
that,
is.
but I was talking about burning everyone in the harbor, but whatever. Anyway, I think it was just Tyrion kind of forgot that things could be that gruesome. Like he's used to like man versus man, swings the axe, it was him or me. But with dragons, it's just like everyone effing burns. Like they didn't stand a chance. They didn't even have the ability to like give up. Like they were dead and on fire before they knew they had an option to surrender. So, like other than the ballista, no one stood a chance against the dragon. So that's how Amanda?
I felt like the show makes it kind of like unclear because at first I thought, yeah, he's like looking at, oh, look at all the death and destruction, but he's been through several other battles and they've never once shown him walking through it without that regret. I do think that Nick has a good point that like they did focus on the Lannister and like he definitely knew what he was doing. He may not have felt like he had the choice to go against this, but it might be hammering at home to see actual soldiers that for your entire life were on your side and all of a sudden are burning. I don't know. I think the show leaves it in like unsure, and I think they possibly did that on purpose because it could be multiple things. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, because like when the Maesters come back to Slaver's Bay, and Dany brings her dragon back, she roasts the boats alive in the bay.
When the
So it's
masters
not
come back
up-
to Slaver's Bay. You keep calling
Yes,
them
sorry.
maesters.
Oh, Maesters. Sorry, yeah, when the Masters come back.
The Maesters they're the real conspiracy behind this. Conspiracy theory number one. It's truly the Maesters that are behind this entire war.
Oh my goodness.
All right, Gary, go to your whiteboard, put a little mark next to it.
I want to see Gary's little like red line dots strings tied to all the different conspiracy theories about what's actually going on. Yeah, so it's from
I'm gonna
a distance.
keep note as to what conspiracy theory we're on, so I don't count the wrong one.
I want
That's
you to
wise,
be that
that's wise.
meme, Gary, of like looking at the board with crazed eyes.
We can make that happen. We can cut and paste his face somewhere. So it's from a distance because it's out in the bay, but the Masters burning was something Tyrion figured and saw would happen. So he is aware that that's going to be an outcome, but it's different when you're walking through the battlefield and there's, say, charred remains next to you. Hey, burned horse, that kind of thing.
All right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of this just kind of rolls back into what we talked about last time. Is just it feels like the show is just kind of just giving Tyrion something to do. Like again, went into the fast travel thing of why are all of these people all of a sudden here on this open plain that's somewhere just outside of King's Landing, and they're using Tyrion to kind of show the horrors of war, but Tyrion should
Mhm.
really know what the horrors of war are like because he's been in at least 2 battles so far here. Gary,
You
what
are
do you
right. Tyrion does know a thing or two about whores.
Wah,
Boo.
wah,
Boo.
I see what you
Boo.
did there.
I had, I guess, something I noticed specifically. You mentioned Daenerys was that her title was very abbreviated when she explained, and she didn't have Missandei to explain her long title. I think it was Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains, and Heir to the Iron Throne, or something like that. But there was I think there was 4 other steps that used to be in her name.
Harry,
before
she's
she
got
came to
people
Westeros.
to burn. She's got people to sentence to death. She doesn't have time to introduce everyone.
Titles.
Exactly.
To quote Robert Baratheon, something, titles. Anyway,
Right.
that I don't know. That was noticeable to me because in previous seasons I thought her hierarchy of title was a little excessive, and maybe that was somebody taking a note of hey, we can just call her the Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains, and she's the heir to the Iron Throne, and just I don't know if they still have Stormborn. It's Daenerys Stormborn, Power Targaryen, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and heir to the Iron.
Unburnt.
Anyway,
Queen
So,
of the Andals in the first men.
Khaleesi,
yeah,
the Great Grass Sea. There was this all mentioned.
psychopaths of the,
I think this is all mentioned when her and John were introduced to one another. She had that really long ongoing title there.
This is Jon Snow.
This is Jon Snow. He's king in the north.
Yep.
Love that part.
So, real
I'm gonna-
quick, before...
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, before we move on to this point, this intersects with... I had 2 major points in this thing, and they're both in this scene, so I just
I
want...
do
Before
too.
we move on from them,
So I
I just
wanna
wanted
see
to get
what's-
them in there.
I do too, so I want to see what Stevens is. Go ahead.
All right.
Samesies.
Sorry. Number 1, Daenerys, well, I guess it's really only 1 point. Daenerys obviously sets both of oh my god, what
Tarly.
sets the,
Randall
sets
and
both
Dick
of
on
the
Tarly.
whatever their names are. The guy from Umbrella Academy and the other one I don't know. He sets them both on fire. And
Dickon.
but yeah, Dickon. Before that happens though, there's an interesting exchange between Daenerys and Tyrion, and he says, "Well, why don't you give him a chance to, go take the black, all that sort of stuff." Giving the chance of a major family to take the black and go, and he responds in the negative, but Daenerys wasn't going to let it either. And Daenerys' response to that, when he's basically pleading for mercy, is, "I'm not here to put men in chains. If that becomes an option, they will take it. I gave them a choice. They made it." He responds, "If you start beheading entire families, I'm not beheading anyone." And then she sets them on fire. I mean, how? That's just... This is Joffrey. This is Joffrey right here. This is the scene where Joffrey basically commands whatever his name is to behead Ned. And it is, hey, give him the chance to take
Pain.
Yeah, Ilan Payne. Give him the chance to take the black. Give him the chance to get out of here. And they, yeah, right. Sir Ilan, decapitate him. Well, there are going to be consequences. Not if I decapitate him. This is... She is pulling a Joffrey right here. I see 2 number 1s, so Amanda.
Interesting point, Stephen. I wrote down specifically right before this, Daenerys had said, "I'm not here to murder, and all I want to do is destroy the wheel. I offer you a choice between bending the knee and joining me, will leave the world a better place, or refuse and die." So the contradiction there between "I'm not here to murder, but refuse me and die" is very interesting, because I was like, what? Tyrion even offered you the chance to look into this, or at the very least delay it, and she just immediately went with it. Go ahead, Nick.
I have to disagree respectfully. I don't think this is a Joffrey thing because if you remember in that instance that you mentioned Ilan Payne, Ned did break as an honorable person, knowing he didn't do anything wrong. He said, "I've sinned against my lord" and everything else, and took the easy road out against his morals, against him, and he's like one of the most honorable characters in the whole show. And then Joffrey went against what he said he would do. In this instance, right from the start, Dany said that she would, bend the knee or die. And
I'm not here to murder.
I'm not saying that. Well, that line I had written down too, saying that line is very interesting because then that's what she did. And you could get into the weeds and say like, "I'm not here to murder," because she's in combat, and then afterwards,
she is a more.
I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Saying this is the choice. I mean, if Charlie says, "All right, I bend the knee," and he kneels, and then finally, I got interrupted. Screw you, Gary. Put your wrap it up down. If Tarly bends the knee, as in the Ned Stark scenario, and says, "All right, I'm sorry, you have beaten us clearly, you're the better master, I'll go with you," and then she roasts them alive, that's a Joffrey move to me. In this instance, I don't think it's Joffrey equating. There's still a lot of questionable things going on there. She said she doesn't want to be Queen of the Ashes, but she's roasting him. So it's interesting, but I don't quite see the equivalency there.
He is a more eloquent Joffrey then. She is not lying straight through her teeth. She's lying through the sides of her cheek. She is.
The axiom is here's the option, choose A or B. He chooses B, and then has to live with the consequences.
The axiom is she keeps.
There's no axe. You get lit on fire, no axe.
The axiom here. The problem is the axiom here is whatever she decides goes. And that's exactly what Joffrey was. Whatever he decides goes. And that means if she changes her mind from, "I'm not here to murder anyone," to, "I'm going to set you all on fire," who's going to call her out on it? No one's going to call her out on it, and no one does. And she keeps saying, like, "I'm not here to be Queen of the Ashes." You said that yourself. What is she doing other than setting everything to ashes? So she is changing that axiom whenever it suits her best.
I disagree, but for the sake of
like any ruler, Stephen, politician at heart.
My question maybe is more of like in a historical context, possibly for you, Stephen, here then. So get your Boo history sign ready, Gary. In these types of situations, when you have a conqueror invading a foreign land, which is essentially what Dany is a conqueror invading a foreign land, even though she's technically born in Westeros, what do these foreign invaders essentially do with the prisoners that they, of the defeated army here? Like, what are the options that they would have had? Because Dany is either to chain them up and drag them along like Robb Stark did, and we all saw how that turned out for Robb, which was poor, or kill them off. I mean, obviously, yes, you do make the great point there of like she keeps saying that she's not here to kill anybody, and then she kills somebody. But like, what historically, I guess, do they do in these situations instead of taking people prisoner and then having to feed them? Kill the people off who don't agree with you or whatever. I don't know.
It would be exile. So there are two different styles of that in history. One is definitely just regicide. If you kill everyone that has a claim to the title, no one will have a claim to the title against you. But then there's also in most, I would say not always in Western culture, but sometimes at least in Western culture, the also banishment. You are disinherited from your titles and sent to, and basically told, never set foot on this land again. You are hereby banished. And obviously, option A is much more secure. Option B is probably the more, if even at that time, they would have probably called it the more civilized thing, because you just don't go around committing regicide against everyone. That was major faux pas. I mean, if we're saying this is a faux pas, people were dying. So, but those are basically the two historical things that happens.
Gotcha. Amanda, go ahead.
I just forgot half my point, but you derailed me when you mentioned historical thing because it made me think of something else. I find it interesting that she chose to kill them after the battle. Like a lot of the times in the heat of the battle or if something happens like that's just considered the fortunes of war. She waited till after the battle. It's her first kind of personal battle on this continent and she chose to immediately say that they were rebelling against her whereas she invaded. And in terms of a historical give me a sec.
I can jump in if you'd like, real quick. Again, a clarification for Tyler's point. It wasn't just that she said, I'm not here to kill anybody, and then she kills the Tarleys. Contextually, accurately, she says, I'm not here to kill anybody, gives them the choice. There's a whole little 5-second spiel there about they make a choice and then they die. Truth. I had a little dissection in that interaction too, since Amanda had commented about foreign invaders, and then I'll throw it back to her here. I actually broke down some of the wording in that, where Tyrion kind of questions the flexible alliance that Tarly has there, because Tarly says, Cersei was born in Westeros. Hold up, I wrote down. Technically, so was Dany. Dany was born on Dragonstone. It's not the mainland, but she was born in Westeros. She wasn't born in Essos. And again, it's all about historical perspective. Is Dany the foreign invader? Or if you go back further, was Robert Baratheon the usurper whose line is now being removed and she's just reclaiming what's rightfully hers? The same thing as if you say Native Americans, we shouldn't allow immigrants into the U.S. and you go back and you go, well, technically you're an immigrant too, dude. So it all depends on what's your historical perspective. Because I think that the way Dany's going about it, I agree, is not the best. But technically, could see it as she's just reclaiming what's rightfully hers.
I would question that in terms of when you have people come back, it's the legitimacy of the person coming back that is really put into play. So, I mean, you could have Daenerys, was born for 5 minutes and lived in the Westeros for 5 minutes. Does that make her a Westerosi? No, not ever. And that there's not a single person in the entire Westeros who sees her as Westerosi. So, for all intents and purposes, she is not. Regardless of whether she has some arcane blood tie, she has no legitimacy. And it's that legitimacy that really puts her, because that's what she's going to have to rule on. She's going to have to rule on the legitimacy of her bloodline. And if no one acknowledges the legitimacy of her bloodline, then she has nothing to rule on.
Yeah, I agree and I disagree. Semantics. I mean, people born in the U.S. and then their families go elsewhere, and technically they get nationalized citizens. I agree. That doesn't necessarily mean that it makes you that, but technically she was born in Westeros. That was my only point.
Sure, and
how people see her is, unless they say it on the show, we don't know what their thoughts are about it. So I agree that probably a lot of people don't see her as that. I'm just saying, if you go back, I mean, for 300 years, all the Maester books say that the Targaryens were
sure,
kings.
But then the Targaryens themselves were. I mean, if we go back on that route, then we get back to the Targaryens themselves were foreign invaders before even that. So I think you have to lay it on the legitimacy issue of the majority of the population, and that determines the who is the acceptable, I guess, ruling group there. And that's unfortunate to say. That does rule a lot in current society as well, and that's why you have the First Peoples being gained recognition now, is because the legitimacy is there. The legitimacy wasn't there in the 1800s, so no one gave a flying heck about if they were there first or whatnot. Yeah, in the 1800s, Gary, look it up. 100%. That's exactly how we treated them, really badly. So
I'm not going to look it up.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
I can't read.
Gary, I have another history fact for you to say boo history about. What I was going to mention was I keep hearing that George R. R. Martin was inspired by the Wars of the Roses that happened in England during. It's very much, I can assure you, nowhere near a perfect parallel, but definitely took inspiration from it. But Henry Tudor.
Were there no dragons?
There was no dragons. Well, I mean, other than on standards. But Henry Tudor, when he won the Battle of Bosworth, he dated his reign as starting the day before he actually won the battle. And that's almost what this kind of reminds me of, is Daenerys being like, you rebelled against me, even though she's literally starting now.
Mm-hmm.
I would say
That's
I would never have known that because I hardly remember American history, let alone British history.
Okay, Gary, I exempt you on this one because Amanda knows a lot about the War of the Roses, more than I will ever. She's forgot more than I will ever know about the War of the Roses.
I know very little about history, and I accept that.
I did have Amanda, do you have a question again? I interrupted on you originally.
No, you're good. I definitely had another thought. It completely disappeared, deleted, and I have no clue. So maybe later on I'll remember it.
I mentioned to the group here, one of the things I had done was wrote a whole bunch of like thought-provoking conversation type question things. One of the questions I had is, let's play devil's advocate. If Tarly had said, I bend the knee, even if you send him to the wall, is he someone you can trust? What do y'all think?
Good question.
I
would
actually-
assume so. I mean, lots of criminals and stuff get sent there.
I would say
By
no.
the laws.
Sorry. I would say no,
By the
just
law-
because he changed sides already in the war. He went from following House Tyrell, and House Tyrell got wiped or was going to get wiped off the face of the map, and he switched sides to then Cersei when they wiped House Tyrell off the face of Westeros.
I was thinking by the laws of the rest of the land, the fact that they've had uprisings and rebellions and stuff before, and it's always like they've always had no problem sending people to the wall. Like everyone accepts that once you go there, like you're there.
That's what I was going to say too. I question whether he would leave the wall if he was actually sent to the wall and accepted going to the wall. I think he would actually probably stay. That's my first opinion, but my second opinion there is also I'm not sure how effectual he would be if he did leave the wall after that. You get sent to the wall, and like what Tyler said, that's a big deal. If you leave the wall at that point, people are going to know you left the wall, and unless they're unless there are major extenuating circumstances, I don't think he'd be able to cobble together a coalition to support him anymore. So I'm not sure it matters if he was able to leave the wall. I don't know. It's a good anti-historical. I like that question.
I didn't really have a thought one way or the other. I thought both sides. I thought, yes, he's got a good military mind, knows the land, and may be helpful if he's there, because he clearly has already shown he can flip allegiances, like Tyler said. But also, he could be kind of a tool. I don't know how well Tyrion, who's probably the closest to his family's ties, would know the Tarleys or know Randall Tarley. Plus, little shout out to Tyler here, not every honorable lord who gets sent to the Black becomes a great guy. Alistair Thorne.
He was a great guy. What are you talking about? He was probably the best Night's Watchman there ever was. Isn't that right, Tyler?
I hear he's still hanging out around there.
Hey, I like that.
So, yeah, just wanted to throw that little anti-historical out there, as was mentioned. Gary.
I don't have anything inspirational to say. I would just say, to qualify how little I know about British history, I probably know more about the Kardashians than I know about British history.
That is unfortunate, good sir.
Oh no, Gary.
I am very fascinated by this, and I wish to know more, but that's for another time.
On the spectrum of important historical things to know, I don't think those two could be further apart. I guess I had one last little note on this particular interaction with the Tarleys. It was just more of an observation on a rewatch when I can stop and dissect the show. I noticed that when the Tarleys are Dracarys, Randall's on the right, and then when the flames die down, it like melts to the floor in ashes, but like it looks like his lower half stays there. And so literally it looked like he like fire burned his spine in half, which I thought was really interesting. And then just like he's on fire and the body falls over. It's just like he literally burned him in half. So that was really interesting.
That goes back to the how does this fire work sort of thing.
Exactly.
And we don't know.
It's speaking of how does the fire work here too. How was nobody close to the two Tarleys being burned ever affected by the burn either? They're all fine.
Yeah, it's enough to incinerate a man through his spine, but no one else gets even a sunburn.
I
It's
think
like-
the Dothraki like walked away from them, so literally they were just standing like with no one around them for
But-
20 feet.
But you look at I mean, still, even 20 feet, the fire is hot enough to literally cook a person alive to the point where they are just
Yeah.
collapse over themselves there. And nobody is just like, oh man, this is too hot. I got to get away.
Maybe how the dragon's tongue is on the roof of his mouth when he spits the fire, he can like Dungeons and Dragons either cone it or line of fire it. I don't know.
When he's just spitting hot fire.
Conspiracy theory number 2 from Nick.
Telling ya, most chromatics have the ability to focus their blast as a single line type attack or spray it as a cone.
Oh, they should just remember to not always use the maximize spell because it's going to use up those spell points.
It's true. Got to roll for a quicker refresh time.
All right. So I think that was it for me to start off with here. And I think, Nick, were you asking questions there, or was that Steven?
Nick.
Okay.
Both of us, kind of.
What do you got?
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, go for it. Keep going.
On that interaction, I had the little interesting refresher in the beginning where Bronn and Jaime slide out of the river, down by the river, and Bronn says, "Until dragons get involved, dragons are where our partnership ends," which I just thought was a funny, point because he literally just saved him from the dragon.
Yeah.
Like if Jaime had been charging to the dragon, he's like, "Dragons are where I draw my line." Why the heck would he have jumped over and saved him? So I just thought that was really interesting. Start off the show.
He's a good guy. Bronn's a good guy.
And to jump
Yes,
off
I
just
like
a little bit there from your point there too, Nick, I like Jamie's kind of little sidebar conversation he has there of just the fear and realization of what dragons actually can do in this battle here. Because obviously dragons haven't been a major threat to Westeros for hundreds of years now or whatever. And to be on the field of battle when a dragon is reintroduced to the world as a weapon of mass destruction, the just absolute fear and terror that Jaime has is just kind of an interesting kind of reflection about him being this military tactician to just go, we're in trouble. She has dragons.
Right. So I'm moving on then from that particular first scene, which was interesting. The next little note I had was Jaime goes to see Cersei and kind of give her the 411 on what just happened. And I wrote down, when Jaime goes to see Cersei, she references, we have the Tyrell gold, we can buy mercenaries. I wrote down, while we're probably thinking there are domestic terrorists or mercenaries there that she may be considering, the only other mercenaries for hire we've heard of are the Second Sons and Essos. One, aren't those still working with Dany? Doesn't Dany already have the Second Sons? Because she just sent Dario Naharis away.
You
Or
forgot
did the Second Sons go with them?
the Golden Company is mentioned when
They're also in
Cersei's-
Essos.
Yeah. Well, that's the other mercenary group that's mentioned in the show.
Okay, thank you. Good point. And then number 2, doesn't that just contradict what Tarly was just saying about foreign invaders? Just interesting about having hired guns from across the sea.
I don't think
and
Tarly
so I-
cares anymore. I think he's a little hot under the collar right now.
Hey.
Man, just throwing them out there. But shouty burning on the dance floor.
Well, I also wonder about the and this gets back. We will once again get to the fast travel. Now we're fast traveling entire armies. Yeah, she might be able to purchase like a mercenary company abroad. How long will it take that mercenary company to, muster and get to where they're going and not get intercepted at sea and blah 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 blah? Like,
It's the time of sending the message or the raven or however they want to do it to that group, having that group be easily found. I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, the Golden Company lives in Pentos, 1-800 yada yada yada. It's going to go find that group and then having them give a response. So tying off that foreign invaders thing, I had another hypothetical for y'all. Which is worse, foreign invaders, as we're referencing Dany then, or foreign defenders? Wouldn't the defenders just be the new invaders once the threat is gone? What do you think is worse? I mean, if you have a whole bunch of armies there from a foreign land and they destroy the enemy you had hired them to do, they're not just going to be like, well, you've got no armies to defend you. We're just going to leave you be. Good luck. what's to say the Second Sons or the Golden Company doesn't just take
I-
over?
I think getting back to the Gary's loved history, that actually happens quite a bit in history. The sacking of Constantinople by the Crusaders is the first thing that comes to my mind. Where
We can't go back to Constantinople.
it's true. It's Istanbul, not Constantinople. But the Crusaders went to Constantinople because they were asked to go there by the governor of Constantinople to help defend it. And when they were there, they're just like, yeah, but we're here to defend it. We're the only police here. Why don't we just take it? And that's they sacked Constantinople and didn't
Exactly.
do anything. Which, don't let anyone fool you. Crusaders were horrible human beings. So
Nothing good happens when you force religion on other people.
I mean,
So, yeah,
yes.
I thought that was good. So then in that interaction, then I've got one more note, but I'll allow a break here if somebody else has anything they want to throw in too. But in that interaction, Jaime's telling the play-by-play of what happened to Cersei, and Jaime says, the Dothraki were terrific fighters. He says, her dragon burnt 1,000 wagons. I paused it and I was like,
Was there 1,000
wagons? Was even in the shot at the beginning of that scene last episode where you see like the little canyon between the pillars and the canyon of the crescent moon, you don't see 1,000 wagons. So again, it might just be hyperbole. He's telling in the heat of the moment how crazy this situation was, or maybe that's an actual reference to like we just saw it off camera or off screen or whatever.
Well, they sacked all of the Tyrell's riches. Like, I assume they took everything of value and were going to sell it.
There's a reference in there though where at the middle of that last episode before that scene happened, he said we got the last of the gold through to King's Landing, and said that we just have these last few ones. That's why they reference the lollygaggers, and Tarly says he'll whip them into shape or whatever because he's a tool. So the majority of the gold and troops and I would imagine wagons already went on to King's Landing. That's why Cersei says we have the Tyrell gold. It's just this like last few small 1,000 wagons left that actually got destroyed. So I don't know if that was hyperbole. I just thought that was interesting that I highlighted. Burnt 1,000 wagons. And then next question that I had is at the end of that interaction between the two of them, the music kind of crescendos, and Jaime tells Cersei that Olenna did kill Joffrey. And I saw, at least what I saw, what took away from it, open to interpretation, was kind of a shift in that crescendo where Cersei was like, I can't believe after all this time you still think Tyrion's innocent. And then she kind of like freezes in her face and she sinks into her chair, and it's like she comes to the realization that Olenna did do it, because then she changes her subject to she should have died screaming, and she deserved a worse death than what you gave her. My question is even if she seemingly seems to come to terms that Olenna was the cause of Joffrey's death, do you think she despises Tyrion any less?
Absolutely not.
Quick answer is probably no. I was just curious if you thought any bit of it lessened. She doesn't want to be his best friend again. I'm just saying, maybe she doesn't hold that in the list of things she hates him for.
I still think this ties back to the part with the prophecy, the fact that show did not include the final part of the prophecy there about the Valonqar would be the one to kill you or cause your demise or whatever. Yeah. Like I still think that's the biggest part missing from the Cersei's hatred of Tyrion, is just because she fears that she has that prophecy out there that Tyrion is going to be the one to kill her eventually. But this definitely does not lessen her hatred towards her brother.
I don't think Cersei ever took prophecy seriously, so I don't think it mattered.
I agree. I don't think she took them seriously, but it so far has been coming true.
I think she... Sorry. I don't know. I disagree. I think that she takes this prophecy pretty seriously. I think that she tries to make it seem like she doesn't, because she doesn't want to appear superstitious, but she is a little stitious.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover now, Nick, or should we jump to someone else?
You can throw it to somebody else. I'll weigh in on those comments. I just don't want to take over everything. I wrote down a lot.
Steven, did you have any more points to cover? I know you had your one
well, we
point
got
with
my
Danny's speech.
yeah, we got that one out of the way. The other thing that I had was the Arya super spy moment, which was then like flipped around and made a Littlefinger super spy moment, and I kind of wanted to get your guys' takes on that. So Arya obviously follows around Littlefinger, watching him do his Littlefinger things. Finds the note. She reads the note, goes into his study, reads the note, and it seems to be a note that obviously Sansa was forced to write by Joffrey, saying "give away your, crown," all that sort of stuff. My first thought was, what?
Correction.
Why did?
Cersei made him write it. Joffrey did
Oh,
not.
whatever. They're the same person, and one's dead. Anyways, uh, but my first thought is, why did Littlefinger choose that specific note? And was that to blackmail against Sansa? Was that uh, basically that's just a setup? Because the next scene is she walks out of the room and Littlefinger's there watching. And so, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? Discuss.
I think it's just more to sow discord between the two sisters there, because I think it's been known that they've not really been a fan of one another, and here they come back together after many years apart, obviously not knowing what each one has been through completely yet there. But my bigger problem with this scene is it's just like, you would have think they would have. I mean, it might go back to what I just kind of said about them not really knowing what the other one's been through, but it seems like it was just kind of set up to just be controversy to happen. They needed something for the people in the north to really do with one another, and of course, fuck Baelish, because he's running out of ideas and players to take over for power there. Go ahead, Gary.
I think there's a lot of coincidence in that. Because it wasn't just like Baelish caught her breaking into his room. If he wanted her to find it, you would think he would just like put it out in the open, not have it be hidden into a bed, and like he would have maybe made it a little less conspicuous.
I would say, though, keeping it out in the open would be a little bit more conspicuous, because then it's like, why is this important note? It's more of like a setup, whereas it was just hidden enough because Arya was, I think, sitting on her knees, and she just happened to look at the bed and saw it was slightly not completely like fitted right there. So she was like, okay, something has been disturbed here, and that's where she looked.
I do see both sides of this conversation, but I'm going to go with Gary on this one. I agree with Gary. Got a solid point. If this was something that he wanted to ensure Arya found, it would be a little less conspicuous. It's in a small 2-inch slot on the underside of the bed. He would have to assume she's going to be on her knee down in that corner. It's because I'm your best friend, Gary. That's why I've got the most ticks next to my name when I agree with you. So I agree with Gary. I think it's a little on the nose that he was able to find it. Sorry, keep going.
Well, and so I guess I also wonder, Arya's a faceless person at this point, right? She's gone through all the training. She's done all the things. She's killed the waif, apparently. And she doesn't notice Baelish there in the shadows. I find that highly circumspect. And I feel like we're playing a game of spies here where spy A is on spy B, but that has been a spy C sort of thing. And it's, to an extent, I kind of get what they're doing. They're trying to, ratchet up the tension, but that doesn't make any sense.
You're thinking that really Arya is being a double agent and knows she's being watched and still continues to break into Baelish's room.
It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Nick.
I think that this isn't so much as they're just looking for people in the north to find things to do. It could be. I mean, we don't know at this point. But I think that there is actually, they've been trying to build up. It could be that they're not trying to do it well. That's all subjective. But I think that the buildup has been showing Littlefinger slowly moving to the outside of his place of power. I mean, he is the Lord Paramount of the Vale. And as Lord Paramount of the Vale, like Royce is in charge now. Royce is standing in front of everybody talking about what's going on in the Vale. Nobody's been like, Lord Baelish, what do you think? And they've made several little scenes where you see the Stark kids walking through the courtyard at Winterfell. Arya pushing Bran and Sansa there, and Baelish is just like kind of creeping off his porch stick off in the corner. He's not really there. So I think that he is losing a little bit of the rap he had, if he ever had it, on Sansa. And I think I think somebody, Tyler, maybe said he was trying to sow discord. I think that there is something there that maybe he's feeling left out, or he's feeling like he doesn't have the political grip that he used to on the Stark kids. And so I think he is trying to pit them against each other and showing this particular note that is the one that Sansa, yes, under coercion, wrote to Robb to get rid of his crown, that shows she's going against the Starks in a sense. Again, context, it was totally, her hands were tied. But that's, I think, what Baelish is trying to do and the show is trying to attempt to do. Not saying they're doing it well, but that's how I took away from it. I don't think it's kind of as left field as it may seem. Amanda.
I wonder even if because Littlefinger didn't choose to do this with Bran. Like he clearly sensed there was a possible crack between Arya and Sansa, and maybe he just is guessing, or maybe Bran's got that vibe of, hey, I am not the normal person that you're walking up to thing here. But I mean, I even wrote my notes. Honestly, not sure why Arya is so sus of Sansa. But I mean, she has only the memories of Sansa when she was younger, and the last time she saw her sister, was it when that Sansa was professing her love for Joffrey and all things?
Yeah.
So I mean, they don't know each other, they don't know what they've been through. Even I don't think they did a full debrief with each other about everything they've been through. So I kind of got it, but I also like at one point that Sansa says to her, Winterfell didn't just fall into her lap. We took it back, us and the Hornwoods and the Mormonts and the Wildlings and the Men of the Vale working together. I'm sure cutting off their heads would be satisfying, but it's not how you get people to work together. I thought that showed so much growth and complete opposite of what she was acting like for Arya. So I wonder if Arya is just testing this to see what kind of person Sansa is, or if she honestly isn't sure yet and she's putting it out there because she has reason to be suspicious of literally everyone around her. But I mean, I loved that Sansa said that, because I mean, every day that's what we're trying to get people to do around us, is trying to get people to understand that just saying the snippy answer or isn't the right way to go. You got to get people to work together. Go ahead, Gary.
Conspiracy theory number 3. Peter Baelish is sneaking around and having lots of little conversations and pretending to sow discord just so he can see who's following him and who's peeking. Like maybe he saw Arya in the courtyard earlier, and maybe he got a message from the Maester and he's expecting the Maester, who has no loyalty, he hasn't been at Winterfell that long, to tell other people and not be secretive about what he's doing. And so kind of sort of see who shakes loose and wants to know more. Anyway, that's my conspiracy theory number 3. Nick?
You have to play every scenario out in your mind. That way you'll never be surprised. You'll know what everybody's move is. So a little bit of the build up into this whole conspiracy stuff with Littlefinger. I took it back to, you see Arya creeping around the corner and comes up where it seems like there's a Grand Hall meeting with Sansa talking to Lord Royce and Lord Glover or whatever. And I wrote down, did she call an audience with these lords? Because the whole chamber is filled with folks. It's just they happen to be at the front of the room. So did she call an audience with all these great lords and didn't tell Arya that Arya comes creeping around the corner? Or did the lords want to talk to Sansa about something, about how Jon shouldn't have left or whatever? But Arya, Sansa just went in and said, yeah, that's fine, I'll just talk to you by myself. And Bran can be wherever, and Arya can be wherever. So I took it almost as Arya seems a little jaded that she wasn't part of the conversation, is how I saw that going in. And then in that scene where Arya and Sansa are, quote unquote, Arya says, this is mother and father's room. Again, this is the first time that they've been back. We don't know how long that's been. Again, the time jumps are weird. But she's only coming from what she knows. And I kind of wrote down, you can't kill your way through an entire army, Arya. You have to have people work together, like Amanda said. However, ein Minute bitte. She can kill her way through an entire army. Lest we forget the phrase. right? Like it is possible to get your end through a great number of folks through violence. So I have a point here, but I want to make it. But I want Gary. He looks like he's thinking on something I already said. You have something, or is it a continuation?
I feel like, as Arya is one of the last 3 Stark children, her place would be at the head table.
Right.
Like,
My thought as well.
John always talks about how he was always at a bench at the far end of the room but as there's no marriages, Arya would be at the head table, as even if she's not, the ruling family, she's still an honored guest. She's still a lord in her own right in the North. So, Nick.
Yeah, that's very astute. I agree, sir. I agree. What the heck was I here? Shoot. Lost my notes. Oh, here we go. So yeah, Arya says, well, maybe you should just take their heads rather than, wait for their whatever agreement or whatever, have them work on your side. And Sansa gives her a look like you can't just go around killing everybody. But then again, she has proved, or at least we've seen with our omnipotence of seeing everything going on, omnipresence, we know that she can do that. And so again, this brought me back to the previous conversation. Here's where my question comes, asking the group. So I guess, does Arya have a point? Is violence into submission the answer? Now, doesn't this just parallel the conversation we had with Dany and the Tarleys? Violence into submission. Why do we praise it when we're like, yeah, go Arya? But then Dany doesn't get a free pass as well for violence into submission. And I wrote this question specifically knowing I was gonna get rebuttals on whether or not Dany did something immoral. So discuss.
Okay,
I had
so
no opinions on Dany, so I stand on the moral high ground.
well, I did not.
Really? I don't think we can go that far.
Gary, the deepest level of hell is filled with those people who maintain their neutrality at times of moral crisis. So,
Nice
anyways,
historical quote, Stephen.
I entirely agree with you, Nick. Actually, I don't think there is a too much window of light between Arya's opinion and Dany's opinion, and I think Arya's opinion is absolutely asinine. I do not believe you can kill your enemy into submission unless you're committing absolute genocide. And I don't know if that's really what she has in mind. I think that she thinks she can just kill enough people, but I don't think that's a real thing. I don't think you can kill enough people to get there. So I don't think it's a great position one way or another, but maybe it's a position to be held by a child. And I think she still is a child at this point. I don't remember exactly how old she is. But killing has worked for her before, and so that's probably her first go-to. But it's like I said, an asinine position. It's not the position of a ruler, but I think the big difference here is she is not a ruler. She has no one to lead. She isn't at the head of an army. She isn't at the head of a country. She's just herself speaking for herself. And so she can be a homicidal maniac, and it doesn't bear the same implications as Slobodan
Milosevic?
whatever her name is. Yeah, I was going to say Slobodan
Milosevic?
Milosevic, but I was trying to find a way to make her name Danny's name, Slobodan Danivich. I don't know.
We'll come back to that. I have another good point on that. I appreciate your answer. Not right or wrong. I appreciate your answer.
It was wrong. Conspiracy theory number 4 is that Arya is saying these very, very harsh things to see where Sansa's head is at. Because in the early seasons, Sansa's political acumen and understanding of like the Game of Thrones is very, very poor. And I think she needs to say like, what would our father do? Our father would like maybe go up to the point of like, we need to like use fear
Get his head
since we
chopped
don't
off.
have respect right now. So what did you say? Sorry.
I said, and get his head cut off.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry.
He does pin Baelish to the wall in like season 1, episode 4, or whatever, doesn't he? And he's like,
See?
"Get away from me."
Violence.
Violence. I'm telling you, get your results.
Violence. Chaos is a ladder.
Yes,
I
it's a
think
lie.
that was because he had his wife meet him at a whorehouse.
Oh, maybe.
You know, real quick, just thinking about it, it really is the violence is a ladder and might makes right opinion that has led us to all the chaos that has happened, right? And it's everyone believing they have superior power, except for Eddard Stark, who just believes he has superior moral power. And that ended well for him. But everyone else thinks they have superior battle power, and that allows them to do whatever they want. And you're having a abbreviated sort of conversations on that where they're just saying might makes right in every scenario, and I don't think anything is going to change until they get out of that idea that might makes right and into the idea that you're going to have to pull some political compromises here.
Well, in the previous episode, I believe Dany said that her goal is to break the wheel. So, like, she has this belief that she's a liberator because up to this point, that's her narrative. But now she's a conqueror. So I think that maybe is what's leading her astray this episode is she goes from being a liberator to a conqueror.
How do you hold on to your humanity in an inhumane world?
Is she liberating Westeros by committing, murder of everyone living there, freeing them from the life of, everyone?
She's just liberating them from this horrible world.
We've talked in the past.
There you go.
We've talked in the past about the danger of if you've never lost a battle, right? Like you have that false sense of success where everything you've done so far, people have praised because the people who are left are the ones who are thankful. But if the people who are still around are not thankful, you're seen as the bad person.
Dany lost a couple of battles, though. I mean, she famously lost her navy.
Now she has,
twice.
yeah. That's how she's now kind of just like, what do I do? So, yeah. So again, context. You have to have context. If you just read everything on face value, she's a terrible human being. She is not making great decisions. But in the context of it, she lost all of her navy, it seems like, twice, as you pointed out, for whatever it's worth. And she lost Dorne. She lost the Tyrells. It's like, yeah, she's killing a great house, but what has happened to her forces in order to get her to that point, right?
So you're saying that the decimation of your forces on the battlefield justifies the killing of prisoners?
No, but you can't have one without the other. It's a false equivalency. You only look at the false and terrible things, the horrible and terrible things that Dany's done. You negate all the horrible things that Cersei and Navy dude, who's a terrible human being, have done. I forget his name.
Euron Greyjoy.
Thank you.
I am very willing to proclaim them all as horrible people.
They are all horrible. That's the thing, is we're trying to decide who's more horrible. I'm just saying it's interesting dissecting this person's actions versus this person's actions. But you can't do that without understanding why they are the way they are in this world.
The show
We
is
have
fascinating in that. Like, everyone has literally endured, like, horrible things happening to them.
Right.
And so Dany's talking about breaking the wheel, but she's not breaking the wheel of that violence either.
Correct. Nobody is without blood on their hands.
Does wanting to kill the monsters that affected you make it right to make for you to be the monster later on? I'm not so sure.
Pour one out for the great city of Dorne.
Pour one out for the great city of Dorne. I'll always remember its city.
City.
All right. Did you guys have more to keep going on, or?
I guess there was some stuff that happened between those two scenes, so I was going to go back, but I'll throw somebody else. I talked a lot.
Amanda, what do you got for us this time?
Let me see it going through my notes. Let's see. A couple random little snipey things I wrote in there. Impressive that Jaime and Bronn swam across that river with Jaime and all that armor. Just had to throw that out there. Laughed at Bronn saying, "Only I get to kill you." Braun in this show has been like, considering compared to the Braun of the books, like I love how they've developed the character in the show. It's funny. Let's see. Oh, conversation between Varys and Tyrion. I really loved that little conversation. Because Tyrion was telling him that, like, that that's what rulers do. They have to deal with that. And Varys pointed out, as only Varys could, because he's had all these interactions with different kings and queens. I used to tell myself that I'm not the one doing it. About her father. I'm not the one burning them. I'm not the one doing this. And Tyrion said, what else could she do? Not burn him alive alongside his son? It was interesting because Varys, sometimes it's easy to forget how far back his knowledge goes. He's interacted with a lot of different players and a lot of history here. There's a lot with Dany in this episode, but also wanted to mention her and Jon. I feel like as Jon's offering to lead this raid, and she tells me that I haven't given me permission, I feel like in Jon, she's starting to see a really good person that does things for the right reasons, and that she's starting to want his approval. What do you guys disagree on that?
You can definitely sense there's a growing admiration between the two. Because again, Jon is that moral standing person there who wants to, as we kind of said, do everything for the right reasons, and she believes she's doing everything for the right reasons. So getting the approval of somebody who she feels is like that is probably what she's kind of seeking too.
She even says at one point, like when she comes back, I think from the battle or whatever, and she says how it went or whatever, and she's like, "You don't approve," and I think he said it wasn't his place to, but we can tell. We can all read Jon's face. It's clear as day. And I feel like she wanted his approval, but she also didn't want to tell him all the details. Like, I wonder if that's a reflection to her on what happened, or if it's just she's seeing him as like too naive, even though he's been through his own share of tough decisions.
I mean, she even has the little line there of like, sometimes strength is terrible when they talk about coming back.
Oh yeah, you're right. She does say that. She's talking
Had
about
that
being
as
in a
well.
position of strength. Yeah.
I had that as well.
I was going to say
I
that
think
if she wants the North to join her, does she not want to explain the cruel and terrible things she's done in war? Like, she wants to keep her story or her narrative clear with the North. They don't need to know about the terrible things she's done.
History is told by the winners.
And the literate.
You can listen. It can be a story told by word. Homer did that. We got the whole Iliad and Odyssey out of that.
True.
Maybe there's a few details smudged. What's fine?
Every good story deserves a little embellishment.
Ooh. Throwing in a Lord of the Rings quote. The only another thing I thought we'd switch over to a completely different set of characters. Gilly here with like the most important, fascinating little information. Sam totally not paying attention, totally over it. I think I missed this the first time I watched the show through, and I was like, "Oh, Gilly's just very clever little thing."
Agreed.
It is a very big detail in there, except we just know that Prince Rhaegar had an annulment and married somebody. Rhaegar.
She calls him Rhaegar. I had to rewind and put the caps on because I was like, did she say what I think I heard her say? She calls him Rhaegar. So, again, people who aren't paying attention, it's just like a throwaway line.
Yep.
Very clever. I
feel like
appreciate that.
I feel like how little she talks. She had probably the most dialogue in this one episode that she's had in the entire season. Maybe all of last season too. Like, just goes on like a tirade of narrative.
Gary's hatred for side characters continues.
I'm sorry.
I mean, he's been
Just-
without the hero of the revolution. He hasn't found a new
He hasn't found somebody to latch
favorite.
on to.
Yeah,
Wasn't
I
it-
look forward to his new favorite, whatever that may be.
Wasn't it that Gilly then would be a terrible person because she's lasted this long? What was the qualifier?
Oh.
Said something like,
conspiracy theory number 4.
Oh no.
Gilly's actually 5. I'm sorry. Conspiracy theory number 5. Gilly is actually the Lord Sith. There's always 2.
The Lord Sith.
The rule of 2.
Gilly. Hashtag.
A master.
I don't know. Does anyone
Arr.
else think that she had a lot of narrative, or maybe they were trying to build up as Gilly being like
No.
maybe a bigger character moving forward?
I think you're just
No.
overthinking it, Gary, here, really.
Now
It's
you're
just-
overthinking it.
It's just she
Yeah.
was providing some dialogue there between her and Sam, giving Sam somebody to bounce off of, while also
Yeah.
dropping a very large nugget of information there that you don't really
Who else is
put
Sam?
together until a little later on, possibly.
Who else is Sam gonna come home and blow up, like just burst
Right.
talking to in that situation? It has to be Gilly. And so I think the context of her giving some little bit of dialogue is meant that it could be so easily hidden as a throwaway line, because then Sam's outburst is what spurns him on to go be disenfranchised.
Could this follow Tyler's theory about 20 hours of narrative left? Like they had to explain like the first nugget of this Rhaegar annulment for later, but they didn't really have any place better to put it. It was like, let's just have Gilly say it. Whatever.
I'm just happy.
We're paying her to be there. Might as well have her talk a little bit.
Well,
I thought maybe like it was the
Amanda.
show's way of making sure it was a little more subtle, which I appreciate that kind of thing when you don't make it. What I don't need 16 arrow signs being like subtext here. Pay attention. I appreciate it when there's a couple when they threw in a couple other random things first, so that us as a viewer is like, okay, Gilly's just gonna give us random trivia that we don't care about, and then like so it means maybe you don't actually tune in for that one until the rewatch, and you're like, oh hey, interesting.
The number of steps or the number of shits he's record.
Yeah.
exactly.
Forgot about that part.
Exactly. I know. I don't think it's that Gilly was just randomly given that because it was just who's going to say this line. I think that Sam is one of the most intelligent characters in the show, and who else but the person working at the Citadel who's got a vested interest in this is the person who should be the one to figure it out. And so I think giving the line to Gilly is a way that she can feed that information to him for him to dissect and figure out the puzzle. I don't think it's like, well, we just got to give it to somebody, give it to Gilly. I think it's that she is the one who just happens to be learning to read, poring over books with him, and finds out this response.
Apparently, Nick's
It's
at a
Nick.
drag show.
Nick's riding the motorcycle right now.
That would be the people outside the hotel room.
Anyway, I was gonna say, did anyone else find it interesting that Sam goes in and like does the last bit of stealing of texts and grabbing of texts? But how did he know where all this like magical White Walker knowledge was? He's just like, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take this scroll. Like, I'm gonna take a scroll from the top effing shelf that I can't even see which one I'm looking at, and that's the one I'm taking. Like, I thought it was a little random.
Library
Anyway,
catalogs,
Steven?
Gary.
The Dewey
We-
Decimal
okay.
System.
Oh, there you go.
Fuckers.
That's because you can't read, Gary. You said so.
Fair enough.
What I was going to say is I think that Gilly being given that line actually maybe implies that she, although comes from a backwoods area, she was very intelligent. That's what maybe Sam picked up on that. And when she is given the access to education like Sam was, it shows. And that you don't necessarily have we've been looking at them as Sam and his pet woman basically up until here, and she's showing that she's an intellectual equal. Hey, you missed this sort of thing.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, Stephen. I also had a line in the previous scene interaction where Sam is letting the Archmaesters at the table know that he's aware of this and that what's going on because he overhears the conversation from that Bran had written a letter to the Citadel, and Sam recalls, yes, that's Brandon Stark, the crippled boy, and he says, I led him through the wall years ago. And specifically, I latched onto that because we always talk about the time is so up in the air and we don't always know when that happens. And I actually did some solid research here. I looked back and referenced that was season 3, episode 10. And so that was years ago. Are those actually years between seasons? Or is some of that meant to be spaced out a little bit? I mean, season 3, again, I did research here. In season 3, Jon was back climbing the wall with Ygritte, and Jaime was a prisoner on the road with Brienne. A lot of crap has happened since then.
Years.
So, that's again.
I mean, years could be 2
again,
years,
you can,
could be 4 or 5. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you
dissect
say,
it.
in context though, years ago, I let him in years ago does not imply, oh yeah, 2 years ago. I remember that. No, years ago implies like
So again,
significant amount of time.
significant amount of time because we also I remember I brought up too when we see that montage of Sam cleaning out the bedpans and looking at the books and putting things away for the maesters too. We're questioning, is that months? Is that like a year's worth of time? Is he there for 10 months? And so to your point, Gary, about Sam's just like grabbing random books and how the hell does he know where everything is? Has he been cataloging those books and knows where that important information is for the last 10 months? I mean, just like we were talking about here with you guys have a bookcase there with all the many books you have. If you needed to grab a book that you were familiar with, you could probably find it blindfolded in your house, correct?
We don't want to get into their kinks, Nick. Just leave that there.
Only you, sir.
Did we confirm that their year has 10 months, Nick? Or did we confirm how long their year is?
So that's another question too. That's a very solid question.
Conspiracy
Gary.
theory number 5.
I wouldn't
Their
go that
years are actually like 100 days. Boom.
Aren't you
Wow.
up to conspiracy theory number 6, actually?
I think it's 6.
Did you already
Yeah.
lose
6.
track?
Damn it.
Because they do have some winters that they say go on for years, and it's not necessarily like their seasons are equivalent. Sometimes
Yeah.
Summer lasts 3 years or whatever, and so that's a very solid question, Gary. When they say years, what does that actually reference? So I don't know. Yeah, there's he had said years, and the point I was highlighting was that was really stuck out to me, and so I don't know if he's been there for a while. Not like that it's been 4 years since Sam's been at Citadel, but just what is that time frame and how long ago was that actually when he referenced that? That was my rebuttal on that. Got more points, but I think Gary was talking on that one.
That was Amanda's question, I believe.
Oh, Amanda's question.
We ran with it and kept going. I did catch that years comment. I didn't write it down, but I am curious about that because obviously the show can only show so much, and if you're like reading the books, it does feel like a long time has gone past. But even the show, like you said, like Jaime was still on the road with Brienne.
He had
So
2
long
hands
ago.
in that one.
He did have 2 hands at that point. You are right. That was a long time ago.
Again, I did the reference. It's towards the end of season 3 that he interacts with that dude.
Okay.
Choppy.
Interesting.
See, maybe that's where the auto jumping to different worlds comes in, or the fast travel. There's no time in this world. It is a dimension of different speeds of time, and depending on where you happen to be at any given day, time might be 2 hours that passes, it might be several years that passes.
Depending on how close you are to the equator.
It depends on how close you are to the nearest rock, which is left of the third rock. You heard me. I said what I said.
What, you got anything else, Amanda?
I think that's most of mine. Are we ready for Gary and his list?
Are we ever?
No one ever really is, but I suppose we better go.
I only had one question left, and that was Arya asked Sansa, like, you're thinking it, And I guess I'm terrible at reading between the lines. What is it that Arya thinks Sansa is thinking? That she's gonna take over? That she's gonna be the Lady of Winterfell, or is there deeper implications?
Sansa wants power. She's going to take over for Jon while he's gone and maybe usurp Jon's power.
That's what Arya's afraid of, yes. I don't know if that's what's actually happening, but that's the prevailing thought that I think Arya's trying to get her to think or agree
I think so
to.
too.
I agree.
I agree. I think Arya doesn't understand that literally Sansa had that chance. Like, Jon offered it to her. All she had to do is say yes. It was Jon's idea for her to take over the rooms. It was Jon's idea for her to be in
Right.
charge, but like she stepped back from it. She said, "No, it's you." And Arya doesn't appreciate all that because I mean, she can't know. How can you? They've gone through so much, but I don't know. I can't tell if Arya is just testing her or if Arya honestly believes it, or a little bit of both, or if she's just being a jerk. I can't tell.
Could some of it be Arya's understanding of what a lady's role is? Because she left Winterfell at kind of I don't know what
Yeah.
contextually how old she was. Where she maybe didn't get to that point which Sansa was, of like seeing what her mother, the Lady of Winterfell, what her role was. Like, she said that she never wanted to be a lady and marry a man and who run his holdfast. Like, that's not what she wanted. And the only other comparative person she's had other than her mother was maybe like Cersei. Like, and then she's been off adventuring and doing lots of other things. So is it just she doesn't have a good reference for what Sansa's job is? Because Sansa is in a role that is not defined. She's not Jon's wife. She's the sister of the king, like a very arbitrary role. Tyler?
Can I throw out a sentence really quick and then give it back to you, Tyler?
Sure.
Just a sentence. Even if it's been years that Arya's been able to stop it, Gary. Even if it's been years since Arya's seen her sister, she still has what 7, 8, 9 years of thinking her sister was a jerk to her. So she could still have gone through a whole bunch of stuff, but still not really appreciate where her sister has come from because she has that past history. Sorry, Tyler.
And I was going to just
That
kind
was
of
3 sentences.
I was just going to expand on that a little bit there too. Of like Arya, when Arya comes back to Winterfell, she's probably still stuck in the past of this is how her sister was. This is how everything was basically before she left originally.
And I think to add on to that, Arya's paranoia has not decreased since she left, right? So
Right.
she's looking everything through not rose-colored glasses. What's the opposite of blood-colored glasses, maybe? And that's feeding into maybe feeding into the paranoia. Who knows?
You want to talk paranoia? Sansa hated the hero of the revolution, but she saw him die. Like Arya could still secretly wonder if she's going to turn around and see the waif take off somebody else's face and suddenly be right next to her. Like if anybody could be anybody, that's a whole nother level of mind trippiness that would really still freak with somebody.
Do you think she's actually paranoid about that? I don't.
I don't think she's
see her
paranoid. I don't think
murder
she is, but
I think her murdering of the waif kind of put that in her back of her mind. I don't think she has thought about that a second time. I think she sees conspiracies everywhere, but I don't think that's one of them.
I don't think it is necessarily. But again, context. Didn't she stab the waif or something like that at the House of Black and White and pulled the face off, and it was Jack Hagar? And she pulled another like face off or something. Like there was some weird thing like that, wasn't there? Where it was like
That's
3 or 4 different people, and finally it was her face, and that's when she went blind.
That's when Jaqen drunk the poison for her because Arya killed Meryn Trant instead of the guy down by the docks.
So even if you are someone who's dead, like it could still be that it's somebody else's face or something. Anyways.
Do you have anything else, Gary, to kind of continue on from?
That was all I had for this episode, so we can go to the next person. And
Ooh.
I think that's everybody else. So there's a couple of points that I'm just going to throw out there that we didn't quite touch
Really?
on. So number one, Davos finds Crevice aka Gendry. He's done rowing.
I wrote down the return of the Great White Hype.
And fermented crab is apparently good for you.
Poking holes in the chainmail.
Cersei is apparently pregnant, although I question that.
I don't know. I don't know. I'll talk.
And then I have got to say that Tyrion comes up with possibly the dumbest plan ever to convince Cersei to hold to a truce of the war between her and Dany, to go north of the wall and capture a White Walker and bring it back to just show Cersei that, hey, there's an army of dead people marching this way. Quite possibly the dumbest thing ever.
Is it possible that this is a lot of consolidating of story where they're like, we need him to do this and we need him to go to King's Landing because we need to, so let's just wrap this all together.
Yep. 13 hours of story left to tell. You got to start condensing stuff together somehow. Nick, you look like you got a point there after you roll your eyes at us.
All the way around my head. Yeah, so originally my finger was up because of the baby thing with I wrote down she's not got a bun, she's got a hot pie in the oven.
Oh my god.
Boo!
Boo.
That one I'm booing.
I don't know. I when I first saw this, I think I was on the thought that she's doing it just to twist Amy for whatever, or maybe have some sort of ace in the hole, like, oh, you can't kill me, I'm pregnant or something. I don't know. I was watching this episode with subtitles, like really trying to dissect it. Obviously, we have the foresight of what's coming up ahead, so that does skew it a little bit. But Jaime walks into the room, and Qyburn's in the room. And again, it's in the show. I'm not spoiling anything. He says, "Would you like me to give you anything for it," or something to that extent? And she goes, "No, that's not necessary." So if it is falsified, are they just like standing quietly in the room, waiting for Jaime to come knock at the door, and then he says some random line? That even for Jaime, even for Cersei's, like set up and trying to make things seem like they're not, and she's convoluted enough. I think that's not right there. I think that's something that like he walked in on an actual conversation. She could absolutely be lying to Qyburn even, saying, "I think I'm pregnant, can you give me something?" But I don't know, it seemed more so like that was a genuine conversation that they were having. Because he then says, "Why is Qyburn here?" And she's like, "Well, he's the hand of the queen, why are you here?" If, again, just like the thing we said earlier with Littlefinger and Arya, if it's something that she would have wanted Jaime to hear, it wouldn't have been as brushed away as it was, or it wouldn't have been as awkwardly interrupted as it was, I feel like. So that was why I had my finger up originally. I had a couple other little points throughout the episode. Were you done, Tyler? Sorry,
Not yet.
Keep going.
Not yet.
Go on.
Speaking of returning characters, the champion of the friend zone is back. Jorah Mormont
Yes.
has returned.
I wrote down in that instance when she leans forward and hugs him, and she's like, "It's so good to see you." She hugs him. In the back of my mind, I thought, I am so amazingly erect right now. Because this is just like full embrace.
Maybe wanted to touch on a little bit too of Jon meeting Drogon there. That whole scene where Drogon comes up to Jon there and doesn't kill him.
That one too. Stuff.
And then the last point here, I'm going to kind of lump two of my points in here together. So at the end, the episode ends with basically air quotes the crew being assembled in Eastwatch there of all of these fighters kind of coming together to go north of the wall there. It's basically, to name them off, it's Jon, Gendry, Thoros of Myr, Beric Dondarrion, the Hound, Jorah Mormont, Davos is there too, but he's not going with, and Tormund Giantsbane are all basically going north of the wall in this quest to hunt whites. And my point was, here's this season, I mean, obviously, as we're wrapping up the show here entirely, the 13 hours of story left to tell, we're starting to consolidate stuff that, and it seems like though what we would call, I mean, maybe this is what happened in the books and everything, but maybe not. But it seems like this is what we call fan service there, where all of these characters who you want to interact are now finally interacting with one another. All of these characters who we haven't seen interact with one another since the first episode are now back to interacting with one another. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out to everyone there of, does that kind of put you off a little bit in a story like this where now all of a sudden, since we're getting closer to the end, everyone who is still alive is coming together just because the show is getting closer to the end? Or, I mean, if the show went on for a little bit longer and made it more natural, could this have been done better? Maybe. But Steven.
So maybe on a slightly alternate route. I'm not entirely sure this is fan service. I think this is a culmination of lazy writing, in inability to kill off more characters because they've killed off so many characters and haven't introduced any more. And yeah, I guess a little bit of fan service at the end there as well. But I think they've been forced to this because there's only so many characters, and they like I said, they haven't introduced any more. You can't have any more plot lines because you're going to have one character per plot line. You can't do that. I would, and maybe I hope the book goes this way. I would actually enjoy it personally if there are characters in these books, plot lines that never meet. Maybe they hear about each other. Maybe you even hear, maybe they're at the same spot for a little while, but they never actually meet. And I think that is like the essence of almost this book series and the TV show series is never giving the fans exactly what they want, always keeping you on the edge there, killing off your favorite character, never giving you the satisfaction that you want, so you're always wanting more. And I'm not a fan of the way they're doing it right now. And to end that, I agree with you, Tyler. I think there's many ways they could do this better.
I think it's interesting to see as a fan. I don't know if it's fan service. I'm very similar, probably parallel to what you both are thinking, but I think that this is the culmination of what's logically been happening because of the characters' stories. Tormund 2 or 3 episodes ago said that he was going to go to Eastwatch, and we haven't heard anything from him since. It was 4 episodes last that we saw them down at the random house shack with the brothers without Bannerhood, and they said, "What do you see? A castle wall, Eastwatch by the sea," and that they were going to go there. I don't think it's as quickly thrown together as it might seem on the face. I think a lot of these storylines have all been seemingly sending them there. When you're done, Tyler, with your points, I've got a comment that tied together some of those threads as well with a question for everybody. I guess I think it's cool to see, but I didn't know if it was something that was hastily thrown together. I think it's been slowly building to this. And if you only have X number of characters alive, at some point you have to tie their stories together, or you have, like Steven said, X number of character stories with just one person in the plot.
And you brought up a great point too, Stephen, of the fact that you can't really introduce new characters and maybe they haven't killed off enough, or they've killed off too many, or they just, again, this goes back to the whole plot line with Sansa there, of how Sansa wasn't supposed to be in Winterfell like that, or whatever. They kind of consolidated her with some other character in the book and stuff. So the choice, it's almost, maybe the way to put it is like the choices the writers made early on are now kind of coming back to, you could say, haunt them, or basically come back to bite them. But basically they're now dealing with the consequences, and not negative consequences, but just consequences of their decisions from earlier on.
I do agree wholeheartedly with Steven's point that, like, it would be cool if some of the characters never met. It does shrink the world some. You have characters who always are crossing paths with other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's cool. It's cool that this is season 7, and Tormund, who we've seen since season 2, turns to Jorah, who we've known since halfway through, in the first few episodes with Dany, and he goes, "Your last name is Mormont." Like, that they've never met, or that wasn't known between the two of them. It shrinks the world to have these characters interact with one another when it's like, oh crap, yeah, that does paint history between the two of us. And so I think it's neat to have those interactions, but it would be cool if some of those characters never met either, and it's just, that they almost did.
Everyone's a Skywalker.
Everyone's either a Skywalker or a Palpatine.
Right.
Ugh.
All right, that's it for me. Did you have anything we haven't touched on yet, Nick, then?
Dang, I did take a crap load of notes. I apologize, folks. I'll try and get through these pretty quickly. Yeah, I had that moment that was shared between Drogon and Jon. Drogon walks right up, sniffs, seemingly recognizes, and even lets Jon touch him. So that was really interesting. Jumped around a little bit here, but Brandon sees all the armies marching with the Night King and Eastwatch. The crippled boy, reference the years comment there. Varys and Tyrion in the Dragonstone throne room where Varys says, I'm not the one doing it. This was the tie-in that I had from earlier. Varys kept saying, I'm not the one doing it, I'm not the one doing it. And we had a comment earlier where we were discussing people and their actions, whether you're a ruler like Dany, or if you're just Arya being a little murder hobo. Are people responsible for their actions in this world, regardless of their title?
Yes.
I mean, technically, Arya wiped out a great house. Is that any less or any worse than what we were talking about with Dany? So we touched on that a little bit. If anyone has any comments, feel free to interject. That was something that I highlighted as well.
I think that I don't think it's any better. I think that it is the same moral depravity. I think that, yeah, I don't know.
In that interaction, Varys continues on and says, that's what your job is, Tyrion, and references to him, she said, with the right counsel, it could be changed. And so I know we're getting towards the end of the pod here for everybody, but we believe that these characters we've come to learn can be changed with the right counsel. Dany and her questionable tendencies, Cersei, do we think these are people capable of change?
That's what I was actually about to say. So Varys is a very clever man. How many rulers has he now served and tried to guide with good, advice here? It doesn't seem like the advice is getting through to any of them. So that either leads you to the conclusion that one, he is bad at it, or two, these rulers are going to do what they do, and there is no impact of a good advisor, which I think we'd want to say is probably incorrect, right? Because Dany was better with better advisors. Maybe Varys and some of these other advisors, even Tyrion. Like, we like to think of Tyrion as such a smart guy, as such a clever guy, and Varys is so freaking clever. And I really legitimately enjoy both characters. Maybe they're freaking horrible advisors. Maybe they can't read their own person and they can't get their point across. And it doesn't matter if what you know in your head is right, if you can't execute it and you can't get your people to execute it. So they're shit at their job.
Exactly. Varys in that scene kept saying, I wasn't the one giving them the punishment. I was just finding them with my little network of people or whatever. Is he actually counseling in that sense, or is he just the master with whispers and Spider is gathering these little flies and then watches them be burned alive? So are you really counseling, or are you just enabling at that point?
Right.
I had the little interaction noted about Tyrion meets with Jaime. It's the first time they've seen each other since Tyrion killed Dad. That little scene was interesting. I noted down when Jaime goes and tells Cersei, oh, by the way, I met with Tyrion. She just blank stares at him, and in my head it was like, response to Jaime 404, response not found. She just breaks her about it. Mentioned Gilly reading a little bit about Prince Rhaegar. Sam had the comment about, I'm tired of reading about the achievements of better men, and I had, go Sam, he's taking charge of his own story. And Arya with her master lockpicking skill, putting all her points into that skill check. Littlefinger's room. And so here's the last little point I had then, was in reference to having all these characters come together. We talked a little bit about, is Are there story arcs there? Is there a reason why they're all kind of tied together? Eric Dondarrion does kind of have a little spiel before the Hound shuts him up about the Lord of Light has brought us together on this path. Again,
Cop
we've
out.
we've seen some magic happen from the Lord of Light with the Shadow Baby and other things. I'm not saying, do you think that the Lord of Light is actually bringing you there? I had another hypothetical in that sense. Where did I start here? Suppose the Lord of Light did have a hand in bringing those characters together. Would you rather believe that that would mean the Lord of Light wants the living to band together to wipe out the Walkers, or do you think that the Lord of Light wants to bring the last of humanity together to be killed by the Walkers?
Well, I will meet your hypothetical with a D&D reference that you will appreciate, Nick. And that is, I was recently playing a cleric of Paylor. And Paylor is, if for anyone who plays D&D, he's a good deity. He's disdains the undead, the god of light, destroys all evil, blah, blah, blah. Come to realize later on in the campaign, the DM did a little bit of a flip. And Paylor wants everyone in the world dead. He just wants the undead dead first. And that's kind of like where we're at. You can't really tell what any specific deity wants, especially deities that give birth to shadow babies who stab people in the heart, but only if you use royal blood to sacrifice it on a something or another. Like, that's not probably a good deity.
The general thought with science fiction deities and characters more powerful in a story than the average human, quote unquote, is that they always view the lower races as pawns. And so, yeah, I don't think that there'd be anything necessarily benevolent or malevolent other than just, I can maybe make something happen, pull these strings, and whatever they're going to do is what they're going to do. But, their destinies are already pre-written. So it's just interesting to see these characters come together, but to what end? And then they march out into the open. I did watch the little after the show bit. Tyler, you had referenced that we think that's we should start watching those as well. So I stayed and watched that. At the end of the credits are quiet. I believe they play the White Walker theme throughout the credits because it's kind of an eerie, disconjointed tone. But at the end of the credits, I noticed there are bells playing. There are bells that are ringing at the end of the credits towards the end of this White Walker theme. And I didn't know if that was meant to be like a sepulchral tone or something like foreshadowing of the end times or something, but I just thought it was really interesting that it was a definite chime, and then it stops and it does the end of the Max showcase. And so I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to mention that there's random bells played at the end. For what it's worth. That's my notes.
Interesting.
All right.
Excellent.
So does that mean now we're good to take it on home here, wrap it up, and call this a podcast?
Yes.
All right.
Your thing. Make sure you save it so we don't lose it like the lost episode.
Yeah, for anyone out there, we have a lost episode that you'll never hear. It was lost. That's why it's called the lost episode.
It was a good one. Gary was actually nice to
fantastic.
me in it, but we'll never find it.
Gary was he was one of the nicest people you'll ever hear. I think he actually had morals.
It was really cool that you opened up to us and told us that really embarrassing thing about you. Don't worry, we won't tell anybody about what the weird tattoo was on
How
your
the
butt.
mighty have fallen.
Anyways, we are going to be watching for next time, Season 7, Episode 6, Beyond the Wall. All right, that'll do it for us here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a good one.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Playing that smooth jazz right in your ear holes. Hello, everyone. It's time again for the podcast here on WKRB Radio.
Okay.
Feel now. If you ever get to a point of like, really, these rednecks are doing that, you're in season 4.
Close.
Close
Pictures
my
bigger.
eyes.
Oh, wait, there we go. There we go. Do I sound better? Everybody see me all right?
You
I
sound
mean-
better. You sound more consistent.
I mean, hearing your
So-
voice generally hurts my ears a little bit, but we accept it.
Worst. Just the
Oh,
worst.
shit, I gotta turn off
Your face, yes. Turn it off.
Bluetooth on that.
Eastwatch. Welcome to the podcast about Eastwatch.
Welcome to the party.
You have fun in games?
We have fun and games.
I think Nick's in the zone. Auto zone. In the zone.
Auto
Get in the zone.
Hurry!
I know one of these nights we need to do like just a quick short snippet as a video I can post on YouTube there to direct everyone to the podcast.
Fun. And then if I do the mute thing, does it still click? Hello? Testing? I'm going to point when I click.
We can't hear you.
Fabulous. Alrighty.
Oh fuck! I don't know what the hell the introduction
Alright, I'm
would
going
be.
to try and mute myself so I'm not smacking in everybody's ears.
Well, Nick had lots of points, so does that mean we want him to be at the beginning or the end of the conversation? Or we need to wait for him to finish eating?
Fine. I can jump in at the end. That's for last, Gary. I'm good.
Unfortunately, Gary's always last.
In our
Shit,
hearts.
we have to figure out something fucked up. Hold on.
No, you have to think of something nice or like interesting or provocative, not garbage.
You're garbage.
Sexy, sweet garbage.
Fuck, fluoride
Luda?
in your drinking water.
You know, he might not be the worst or the best, but you do gotta respect his honesty.
I don't
And he may
understand.
break your heart, but I don't really think there's anybody as wrong as he. So, Gary, you can take this chance in the end. Everybody's gonna be wondering how you feel.
I think you're singing a song, but I don't know the fucking song, so.
You might say this is ludicrous, but Tayo Cruz, tell them how you feel.
Would you have him
Team
sign? Did you have
reserve.
him sign your whip or something cool?
Your whip. Sounds like you're saying your car. Did you have him sign your whip?
No, Nay, he did sign. I didn't have him sign my whip.
Watch me
But
move.
watch me, Nay.
But watch me, Nene.
Get the pictures. Forgot how I bring my pictures back. How do I bring sexy back?
Technology and Nick.
Bringing
Sexy
sexy
back. Serious, I don't know how to act.
back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gary, take him to the chorus.
Dirty thing.
There we go.
The cats are here to steal from a baby.
The cats are here to steal from my baby.
Hi, Tyler.
All right, yeah,
Why are you
let's
waiting?
start here before
Hi.
we.
Let's do this.
Yes. Before we continue
man.
on too far. All right.
You could have the bingo be finding people's
No,
offices.
no.
Leave it to Gary to regress.
I will take ideas from Gary.
Okay. Everyone good to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Nick,
Shut up.
not good to go.
All right, here we go.